My parents kicked me out at 14 for bad grades. After building a six-figure business, they tried taking credit publicly, so I revealed their abuse. I'm a 27-year-old man, and my parents kicked me out for getting bad grades, that's right. They believed failing school was an unforgivable crime. Even though our family has lived in the U.S. for 2 generations, my parents never adopted any American parenting approaches. My entire childhood was spent under their strict watch, and they were obsessed with my grades. To them, good grades were the only path to success in life. My older sister, who was just a year ahead of me, was always the star student. She consistently topped her class, which meant constant comparisons at school and home. Things were fine until elementary school. I did well and got mostly A's, but my sister graduated elementary school with straight A+ grades and topped her class. Meanwhile, I got an A and didn't even make the top 10 list. That's when my parents' disappointment began. By the time I was in middle school, every exam result turned into a comparison game. My parents would sit down with my sister's old report cards and match them to mine. The more they compared, the more my grades slipped. My A's in elementary school dropped to B's and C's in middle school, and their anger skyrocketed. They tried everything to punish me. Short of physically hitting me, I was made to kneel for hours without food or water. The night before an exam, they'd starve me to help me focus. A month before tests, they confiscated my video games, locked me inside the house, and banned me from playing outside or eating my favorite treats. Anytime I asked for anything, their response was always, "Get good grades, then you'll have it." I eventually stopped asking. My parents run a small grocery store down a side street. My grandparents immigrated to the U.S., with my grandfather working as a day laborer and my grandmother as a janitor. They worked 2 jobs each to raise my dad and uncles. My father had to drop out of school to help support the family and has been working since he was 11. My mom had a similar story. Together, they saved money and eventually started their little grocery business. Because of their tough upbringing, my parents believed good grades were the only way to escape poverty. But the truth is, we weren't as poor as they made it seem. They just had that typical Asian mindset, saving for a rainy day and living like they were broke. While I respected their hard work and belief in education, they went way too far. School grades only matter so much, and even repeating a year isn't the end of the world. As a kid, I genuinely worked hard to match my sister's grades, but just couldn't. Memorizing things was a struggle for me, unlike my sister, but I excelled in subjects that involved calculations. When the punishments got worse, I became defiant. I started skipping classes, wandering the playground, and writing silly jokes and song lyrics on my exam papers just to frustrate them. When they found out, they locked me in the basement with my books until I finished studying. On weekends and school breaks, I wasn't allowed to play outside. They took away my video games and comics and never bought new ones, but I was clever. I found ways to sneak out when they weren't home. Since my parents worked long hours at the store, I'd play outside all day. When they caught on, they made me come with them to the store on weekends and during summer breaks. This was supposed to be punishment, but I ended up loving it. I enjoyed helping customers, recommending items, and working at the checkout counter. But my parents didn't like that. They wanted me to be a doctor or engineer. Anything less was considered a failure in their eyes. One day, I casually mentioned I wanted to be a salesperson because I was great at selling. They were horrified. To them, sales jobs were for uneducated people, and they had invested too much in my education for me to do anything but a respectable job. This continued until I hit rock bottom. I failed my freshman year of high school with an F- and had to repeat the grade. That's when my parents lost it. They acted as if I'd committed a crime. The punishments intensified. The verbal abuse and mental pressure reached their peak. They said I had disgraced the family beyond repair and couldn't stand the embarrassment anymore. They kicked me out, telling me I was on my own and not to come back. Not even if I was starving or freezing. I was devastated. Sure, I was rebellious, but I never thought they'd throw me out. I wasn't ready for it. Since they hadn't let me socialize, I had no friends to turn to. My life had been restricted to school, home, and the store. At first, I was terrified of living on the streets, but soon, I felt a sense of freedom. For the first time, I could do what I wanted. That first night, I slept on a park bench. The next day, I went downtown to search for a job as a salesman. I knew I had a knack for sales, so I walked from store to store, asking about vacancies. After trying my luck at about a dozen places, I landed a job at a beauty store. It wasn't an easy process. I had no qualifications or experience, but the owner was in urgent need of staff. He gave me a task: sell an expensive lipstick as an add-on to a customer who only came in for a night cream. Somehow, I managed to pull it off. The owner thought I was passionate and charming enough to sell makeup to young women. So he hired me. The pay was minimal, but he offered me a place to sleep. As my sales numbers improved, I asked for a commission on each item I sold. That marked the start of my journey toward becoming a successful entrepreneur. My parents had thought working in their grocery store was punishment, but it actually gave me valuable real-world experience. I only wish they had recognized my potential and realized that practical skills can be far more beneficial than rote memorization. After that, I switched jobs for better pay. One employer even offered to cover my college expenses, but I declined. I had other plans. At 21, I launched my own company that provides support and sales services to small businesses. We close sales for product-based companies, generate revenue for them, and earn hefty commissions in return. Today, my company handles projects across various industries: credit cards, insurance, cosmetics, books, and more. We're partnered with over 50 companies. It didn't happen overnight or even in a year. It took more than 5 years to reach stability. I started with just 5 employees and 1 client selling mattresses and pillows. Now, we're a team of 200 sales agents helping sell thousands of products. Lately, my mom has been stalking me on social media. She started following me on Facebook and Instagram. My accounts are public, and she's been liking my old photos and posts. I'm not sure if she's trying to make her presence known or accidentally doing this while zooming in on my pictures. One thing's clear. They're impressed by my lifestyle. They once saw me as a failure who could never succeed without good grades. But here I am, making 6 figures a month. A week ago, she sent me a text saying she missed me and asked me to come home. I saw the message but didn't reply. Now, she's flooding me with praise, telling me how proud they are of my success. She keeps pestering me to visit. No matter how much I ignore her texts, I can't stop thinking about them or the childhood trauma they caused. I'm torn. Part of me wants to go home just to flaunt my success in their faces, but my girlfriend thinks I should stay away. She believes they'll manipulate me with guilt to get money from me. What do you all think I should do? Date 1. This is going to be funny. Despite my girlfriend's warnings, I couldn't resist the urge to show up at their door. My dad wasn't home, but my mom and sister were waiting for me. My dad still doesn't acknowledge my success. He believes I'm making money by scamming people and wants nothing to do with me. My mom apologized, saying I had to endure everything because of my dad's old-fashioned obsession with grades. It was amusing how she made him the scapegoat. Considering she'd been just as strict, when I called her out, she shrugged it off, saying she'd just been following his orders as a good wife. When I pressed further, she laughed it off and said those were things of the past, and we should move on and be a happy family again. I asked my sister about her life. She told me she'd completed her master's in literature but was struggling to land a teaching job due to her poor communication and social skills. I already knew why, but I feigned curiosity and asked how her stellar grades hadn't helped. She blamed our parents, saying she'd spent her whole life locked in her room, studying to please them. She had pushed herself to the limit and buried herself in books, so I knew just how isolated my sister had been during school. She barely had any friends because mom wouldn't allow it. According to her, white kids were bad at studies and would be a bad influence. Do you see the problem? Despite working hard her entire life, she can't secure a job. Even if someone is willing to hire her based on qualifications, her poor communication and social skills hold her back. Seeing her like this, I felt relieved that I'd been rebellious. Otherwise, I would have met the same fate. They had also tried to keep me isolated, discouraging me from mingling with other kids and forcing me to focus solely on academics. How wrong they were. My sister joined me in criticizing our mom for their poor parenting. Mom started crying but, rather cleverly, shifted all the blame to Dad. Once we were done blaming her for our traumatic childhood, I asked why she had invited me. She launched into a lengthy monologue, flattering me about how proud she was of my success. In reality, she had no idea what I even did. As I mentioned earlier, to an Asian parent, success is being a doctor, an engineer, or working a high-paying job at a bank. They don't understand entrepreneurship. To them, running a business is the same as running a grocery store, something they look down on. Sitting there brought back so many childhood memories. My parents had convinced me I would end up living on the streets like a loser. They even manipulated me into believing I had a mental issue because I couldn't get straight A's. Oh, and I should mention, they even took me to a therapist for it. After 2 or 3 sessions, the therapist scolded my parents for pressuring me unnecessarily and told them I was just a normal kid with an average IQ for my age. My girlfriend had bet me that mom only invited me to ask for money. She lost the bet because mom didn't ask for any. Yet, but her behavior made it clear that a request was on the horizon. Since then, mom has been checking in on me constantly. Whenever her texts pop up, my girlfriend places a $1 bet that it's about money. I'm winning every single time, but I have a feeling I'm going to lose soon. Mom just invited me to dinner this weekend. It's obvious she's trying to paint herself in a rosy light before asking for anything. I just got her text confirming the dinner. I'll update everyone after the weekend. I have to rush now. Bye. Update 2. Hey everyone, I got my sweet revenge on my parents. I doubt they'll ever call me again after this humiliation. In my last post, I mentioned Mom's dinner invitation. I responded that I was busy and couldn't make it. Yes, I was playing hard to get when she insisted. I asked why she was being so sweet when Dad still thought I was making money illegally. She claimed it was Dad's idea to host the dinner as a gesture to make amends. Supposedly, Dad was now proud of me and wanted to apologize in person. I asked, "What do you mean by organizing? Isn't it just the four of us?" She said no. They had invited close friends and relatives from the neighborhood. I agreed to come. This was the perfect opportunity to confront my childhood demons. Mom asked me to dress my best and arrive on time. The rebellious part of me kicked in. I showed up 2 hours late wearing a gym sweatshirt, trekking shorts, and a cap. Showing up in shorts to a social gathering is practically a crime to Asian parents. Mom called me repeatedly, but I didn't pick up. I just texted her that I'd be late. No explanation. I'm sure that ticked them off. My parents have always been obsessed with presenting a perfect image. Whenever guests were expected, they'd spend 2 days cleaning, planning meals, and setting up the house like a showroom. Guests would be served on the best china, and if they stayed over, they'd get the finest linens. They called it our culture. But it was mostly for social validation. My parents had reserved a rooftop section of a restaurant. When I arrived dressed so casually, I definitely got some looks. Though they were masked with fake smiles, since I'm now earning more than anyone there, they had to fake appreciation. My parents were clearly irritated but didn't say a word. Instead, they hugged me and raised a toast, singing praises about me. That was the first time Dad had ever hugged me. It felt awkward and insincere. Their behavior made me second-guess myself. Was I wrong to think they'd been so toxic? For a moment, I thought of quietly eating and leaving, but then they started bragging. Claiming my success as theirs, they boasted about my accomplishments, my possessions, and my fancy lifestyle, and they took full credit for shaping me into the person I'd become. Then my outspoken aunt chimed in. "Didn't you guys throw him out of the house?" she asked. I burst out laughing, clapping at her boldness. My parents' faces flushed with embarrassment, but they quickly recovered, claiming it had all been a tough love tactic. They said it was thanks to their punishments that I'd turned out well. That's when I lost it. I said, "That's right, guys. I owe all my success to my toxic parents. Kicking me out was the best decision you ever made, right? You always said I'd end up as a homeless loser or a drug addict, or worse, a criminal. Remember when you refused to let me join a family vacation because my grades weren't good enough? Or how you used to lock me in the basement with barely any food, forcing me to study there for hours? You're so confidently claiming you knew I'd make it big. It's funny, because I remember a very different story. After I let everything out, I sarcastically told everyone that if anyone wanted their child to be successful, they should try our family's toxic recipe. It was a monologue of years' worth of pent-up pain and resentment. Mom tried to intervene, but I shrugged her off. My sister, standing beside me, rubbed my arm to calm me down, but I was beyond anyone's control at that point. My parents were in tears. For them, public humiliation like this was worse than death. Their obsession with community reputation had always been their top priority. But I couldn't have cared less. My sister was bawling beside me. Some of you have asked how I can have a soft spot for my sister when she never stood up for me. She was just a kid herself. Only a year older than me, and my parents did more damage to her than they did to me. At least I had a rebellious streak that let me sneak out to play, experience a little life, and build something better for myself. My sister, on the other hand, had her spirit completely crushed. She was never allowed to enjoy her childhood. Even now, she's still struggling with low self-esteem and living with our parents. I offered her a job at my company, and she's even taken personality development classes, but her progress is slow. I've encouraged her to work with me to develop soft skills, and then she can decide what career path she wants. I've cut all ties with my parents. I told Mom not to contact me again and admitted that I'd only spoken to her to take my revenge. After that, I blocked her. The only family member I plan to stay in touch with is my sister. After the dinner, she patted me on the back for exposing our parents, saying it was the best revenge possible. Money means nothing to our parents. Reputation is everything, and now their perfect parent image is shattered. Several family friends and relatives reached out afterward, apologizing for what I had endured, but I didn't share my story for sympathy. I wanted people to see the damage that comes from cornering children over grades. My sister and I are living proof of what bad parenting can do. Story 2. I, 30F, cheated on my husband, 27M. He's taking it well, but I feel he's still filled with resentment. What I did was awful, and after guilt consumed me, I cut things off with my affair partner and confessed everything. My husband didn't explode in anger. Instead, he became withdrawn and depressed. I begged him not to divorce me, suggesting counseling, therapy, or even an open relationship, but he wasn't interested. He said he wanted to try working things out, and I jumped at the chance to make amends. I cooked his favorite meals, left him love notes, and bought new lingerie to entice him. But his reactions were lukewarm at best. He smiled and thanked me. But he hasn't told me he loves me since I confessed. He barely initiates anything, and I have to push myself onto him. He doesn't complain, but the spark is gone. We've talked a few times, but I can feel that I've lost the man I love. His behavior is polite and distant. Nothing I do seems to break through his facade. Before all of this, he was emotional and sincere. Now, he wears a mask of indifference no matter what I say or do. I want him to show his real emotions, even if they're filled with anger or hatred. I still love him, but I don't know what to do to fix this. Commenter: is this a troll post? If not, can you share more details? How long have you been together and how long was the affair? P: we've been married for 5 years, and the affair lasted a couple of months. It was with a client. Commenter: what do you mean by cutting off the affair? Is this person still a client? Do you have to be in contact for business? Are you in therapy? And do you know why you cheated? I ended the affair and passed the client's contract to a coworker. No contact since. I've been in individual therapy, but I don't really know why I did it. It felt like my body was on autopilot. Date 1. He knows I cheated, but we didn't separate. I begged him to let me fix this, and he agreed. But his behavior has been indifferent ever since. Like I mentioned, I've tried to be the best wife I can. Cooking his favorite meals, buying him gifts, and sleeping with him regularly. He smiles and thanks me but never initiates affection. 2 weeks ago, he started coming home very late, and when he does, he just goes straight to bed. I finally asked him what was going on. Update 2. He left me. I did what you all suggested. I begged him to talk. At first, he refused, but I cried and yelled so much that I ended up throwing up. He softened a little, helped me clean up, and we finally talked. I asked if he was cheating. He admitted he'd been talking to another woman but claimed he hadn't done anything physical. I asked if she was the woman my friend saw him with. After thinking it over, he said no. It was someone else he met a month ago at his office. I couldn't help asking how he could do this. He reminded me that I had given him permission to be with other women, though he said he hadn't crossed that line. Instead, he confided all of our problems to her and played it like he was having a full-blown affair to make me feel the way he felt during my cheating. He said that I had made it clear I was cheating on him, and it crushed him every day. When I explained I hadn't done any of that on purpose, he said it was even worse, that I hadn't cared enough to notice how he was suffering. Everything I did to be a better wife after my confession, he said, just made him think I was selfish and lacked any self-respect. I begged him to work on our marriage. He said we could go to counseling to sort ourselves out. But the marriage itself was over. He didn't wish me any harm but said he couldn't stand seeing me suffer anymore. He said I wasn't the woman he fell in love with. I broke down again. He held me as I sobbed. But every time I begged to work it out, he just shook his head. When I asked where he would go, he said he had already found a new place. I asked if he was moving in with the other woman. He said no. But they were close. I demanded to know how he could choose a total stranger over me. He said I wasn't his wife anymore and that between two strangers, this other woman made a better impression. I told him he was being a fool, that she could easily use and dump him. He got harsh, saying she was already better than me. He said he wouldn't tell our families I cheated. Instead, he would tell them we simply grew apart. But he warned me that if I tried to make the divorce messy, he would expose me to everyone. He offered to leave the house to me as long as I kept the divorce smooth. This all happened yesterday, and he's already packed up almost everything. I can't stop crying. I can't believe this is happening. It's horrible and unfair. One last comment from me. I know I'm in the wrong here, but he never wanted to fix this. He used me for months and then discarded me. Yet, even after all of this, I want him back. I want us to forgive and forget the hurt we've caused each other. As for this new woman, I don't think she'll be good for him. Update 3. I got served divorce papers today. This feels like a nightmare. I keep telling myself it's not real, that I'm going to wake up and this will all be over. My husband moved out 2 weeks ago, supposedly to live with another woman, but I kept tabs on him. Friends who checked in for me said there was no other woman at all. I thought or hoped he was just taking time to gather his thoughts before coming back. But today the papers came. He's really doing it. I don't want to believe he's done with us. I love him so much, and I miss him every day.